Welcome to the Path and Purpose podcast, where we explore the journey of living and leading from your soul's purpose. I'm your host, Dr. Cameron Martin. As a spiritual coach and leader, I've dedicated my life to helping changemakers, creatives, and conscious leaders align with their soul's calling. In each episode, we dive deep into the stories of those who are paving the way for a more conscious and compassionate world. My purpose is to explore the intersection of spirituality and leadership, offering you practical insights and inspiration to live and lead with authenticity. Join me as we discover how to embrace our soul gifts, overcome barriers, and learn to lead from being. This podcast will inspire you to live in alignment with your soul's purpose and create a lasting impact, one conversation at a time. On this episode of the show, I'm here with Ron Stotts. Ron is a 3-time best-selling author with a PhD in psychology and a doctor of chiropractic. He's been teaching meditation for over 45 years. He's explored the depths of ancient wisdom and the latest in psychological, neurological studies, and leadership as he guides entrepreneurs and executives into the highest levels of conscious leadership. I'm very excited to have this conversation with Ron today. Ron, welcome.
Oh, thanks for having me on the show, Cameron. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And actually, your profile ended up in my inbox, and I went, oh my gosh, all the things that this show is about. So I totally want to talk to him. So I'm appreciative of our time together.
Well, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to begin by saying a couple of things about your birth chart, and I'll let you respond to it. And then we'll get into our conversation here. Don't worry, I won't spill all of your secrets out to the world. Yeah. But when I look at your birth chart, so your sun is in Pisces, moon in Cancer, ascendant in Capricorn. You are someone who is pretty tapped in spiritually. You have many spiritual gifts, and you know this about yourself. You are intuitive. And you've learned over time to rely on those intuitive abilities to connect with yourself, of course, but with others as well. You are someone who is empathetic and is certainly aware of other people's emotions, underlying belief systems, motivations, etc. And in particular, you bring that to your work. You're able to totally understand the motivations of others and what's happening below the surface, which definitely helps. You also have a very professional, we'll say, exterior. You're someone who is very attractive to many people, friendly for sure. But many people are attracted to you. You present a professionalism, which I'm sure helps quite a bit because what you're inclined to share has a lot to do with what's happening below the surface, emotions, obviously spirituality. We're going to talk about this. But you are certainly perceived as someone who is competent. And your career is a place in your life where you've actually been able to express a lot of the, I'm going to say, spiritual gifts that you have. And that part of your life has been very expansive. You mentioned a couple things to me before we started about the career you've had, and it's been, I would say, a very full one. It's been an area of life where you've learned a lot about yourself personally. And when it comes to making money, it's sharing your voice and your thoughts and your ideas. Obviously, you've written books, so there's that. But learning to truly express yourself and some of the less tangible aspects of being, right? So the conversation we're about to have about consciousness itself is a way that you have a lot of value to share there. I know it. And it's a way that you're able to serve. So with that said, how do we do?
Sounds like I'm perfectly designed to be me and do what I do.
That's exactly right. So for the audience, if you want to share, what exactly is it that you do? And then we'll back up the conversation a little bit into how you got there.
A ways back, maybe 10 years ago, I was working with all different types of clients. I didn't have a target audience per se, and I certainly had worked with some incredible entrepreneurs and executives, owners of NFL football teams and owners of national hotel chains and all variations of these things. But I never thought of myself as a leadership coach or anything like that. It was just everybody coming in with their stuff and me helping them through it. But yeah, it's really began to develop. My publisher actually pointed out to me that I have an exceptional ability to support people in moving into higher levels of consciousness. That I was a spiritual teacher with centers in Switzerland and America for many years when I was younger, and that was the game. And but it's also the same capability of taking people into conscious levels of leadership. And I saw very clearly, due to all the research, that if you're really going to create a more conscious and caring world, the people who can have the greatest impact, not only on an organizational level, but on a societal level and a lasting impact, it's really high level conscious leaders who can do that better than any. And since I have the opportunity, the ability to take people into those highest levels, I figured, well, I'll use that and support my goal to create a more conscious and caring world going through that. It's kind of, if you're familiar with the 100th monkey theory, where if you get enough people doing it, then it becomes the norm. And so that's my quest.
Mm, a beautiful quest. And mine too. So there's a beautiful thing that we're connecting about here. So I guess I want to go back to maybe an earlier part of your journey, more of the spiritual connection for you. You mentioned a few things here about being a spiritual teacher. And so, what was your spiritual journey like for you? Maybe bring us to your awakening or when you started to really understand these aspects of yourself that are coming through in your work now.
That's a long story. I'm trying to figure out how to abbreviate it for you. It started as a young child. I was very interested. I was going to a Christian church. My mom was a Sunday school teacher, and I was very, first to learn the 23rd Psalm in my class and got a red ribbon, that kind of thing. But by age 12, I was also looking at, well, what else is out there? The kids next door were Catholic, and, I wanted to go to the synagogue. I wanted to go to all these different churches, and just see what they were doing, because I wanted to see the commonalities, what the focus was, what the intentions were. And I began after, quite a bit of, 12, 13, 14, really recognizing the similarities and appreciating all that they were doing. But it felt like, well, that's not quite enough. There's more. There's something behind all of this that I wanted to explore. And that's really when nature became my church, and I started meditating in nature and just really connecting with the universe in that way. And I somehow at 19 joined the Marine Corps, thinking that was the best thing for me to do to help my country, not
Okay.
realizing that Vietnam was a complete, failure over there. And by the time I got out, and I got out in a year from a medical discharge, but it was a mess. I was a mess, and that whole thing was a mess, and I didn't know how to handle it because all my images of what America was were really torn apart, and all that I'd learned from my parents and things that I trusted that got me into that situation where I'd be killed or killing, I mistrusted, and so I really let go of it all, and floundered for a couple of years, and really became suicidal, and hiked into the mountains one day, and with the decision that it was time to end my life. And after 3 days of really contemplating that, I decided to, yes, it was. And as I was thrusting a large hunting knife into my heart one morning, I suddenly was dissolved in a white ball of light. And, not having a clue what that was about, but I experiencing the oneness and the perfection of the universe, and saw that regardless of my understanding of my purpose, that there was a deep purpose, an important purpose in my life. And that really launched me into that deeper exploration. I probably meditated 35,000 hours at least. And and now, it's like, how do I get back to that place of feeling, being connected with, knowing that perfection, that oneness, and that level of self-acceptance and love, universal love, if you will. And that's where I live now. That's a breath away at any moment. And so that went well, and people started getting interested in, I was a psychologist, but people started getting interested in what I was doing. And so I started teaching meditation in my mid-20s, and people started having all sorts of experiences while they were in the meditation with me. And so I started taking them out in nature and going into higher states of consciousness where they could experience seeing how the different siddhas, the different powers could be played out in relationship to the universe, which my intention at that time was really like to show them that if you're really connected to the universe, then it's all your playground. But of course, people got attached to, oh, Ron does these special things, and so let's go hang out with him. And it just turned into, putting somebody on a pedestal so you can knock them down later.
Mm-hmm.
But, I've just stayed with that journey. I mean, I probably, if somebody were to really twist my arm, I'd probably have to acknowledge that the work that I do really comes out of my Buddhist studies, and not necessarily traditional Buddhism, but what Buddha said and where he came from, and having really been able to connect directly with that level of consciousness, come from that place. And that's what I do, is I teach people how to quiet their minds so that they can discover themselves and fall in love with themselves and become their authentic whole self, so that they can have compassion and care for themselves. And oddly enough, when they find that, they also recognize that that relationship with themselves is mirrored in their relationship with others, and they become these incredible leaders that create really, to me, I'm blown away by how cooperative and collaborative their organizations are, and how successful and financially and productively they become in a very, very short time, within months, within a year at the longest.
Yeah, it's interesting when we start to align ourselves personally and otherwise with universal law that things just seem to work. I liked I liked what you were saying about the playground, because it's true. When you do start to understand truth with a capital T, right? The universe, how things are working, understanding your own truth, and everything is your playground, truly, because we are co-creators with the universe. And so recognizing that we're not a victim, we're not separate, but it's that separation consciousness that creates, I believe, a lot of the leadership paradigm that is present on the planet,
Mm-hmm.
which is this paradigm of control and manipulation. And I need this from you in order to do that. And if not, I'll just throw you out like garbage, and all of this, which in my opinion is not true leadership.
Right.
Leadership is an expression of being, an expression of your being. I want to know for you how you understand this connection of self and leadership to maybe leaders who are like, I don't know about that spiritual thing. So, how is it that you help to sort of open people's minds, we'll say, to what you know to be true
Mm-hmm.
about leadership? So, let's say you're working with someone who isn't really experienced in this realm in which you
Right.
play. How do you approach that?
Well, people come to me, unfortunately, when they're in trouble. I'd love to have them recognize that they can create an inspiring life and the joy of that, but that doesn't motivate people to take action very much. And so they come to me when they're struggling, when they're having difficulty in their life, and that, they're vulnerable, and that vulnerability gets them curious, and they begin to listen. And I create a very safe, supportive, trusting environment, and I fortunately can convey that in my languaging and whatnot. And I really help them recognize that everything they've done to this point in their life has been perfect. It's been perfectly designed to support them in getting through their childhood and getting to where they are, so they can taking care of themselves. They were born in a world where they're looking outside of themselves for love and acceptance, and their survival depends on it. And they've continued to look outside of themselves for acceptance and who should I be, what should I feel, what do I do with my life? And that's coming from a fear-based place. Those descriptions of leadership that you were referring to earlier, those are all just fear-oriented. They come from a disconnection with us, and that disconnection creates a very noisy mind. And that noisy mind supports us being afraid, and reasonably so, because we don't have access to the best of who and what we are. So, oftentimes the first thing that catches their attention is I ask them to breathe, because I notice usually they're not. They're up in their head and not breathing, not taking care of themselves. And as they begin to breathe, they begin to slow down. They get curious. They become more present. And as they become more present, then we can begin to guide them into recognizing beliefs and limitations that they otherwise didn't realize they had. And as they really go on that self-discovery, that self-development of self-awareness journey, it's exciting, it's rewarding. They understand why they created those limitations, why they were important, why the protection they put over their heart as a child was necessary, but also why removing that the armor around our heart and opening up our heart and mind is now critical for them to be able to step into the level of play, the level of leadership that they're ready for. And so, and a lot of times we hear this thing about, well, I don't feel like I'm enough, or I'm not living up to my full potential, that sort of languaging. And the truth is, you're not enough. And, that's, of course, very confrontive for people. But the follow-up, which comes very quickly, is, you need to learn to look within and access more of who and what you are. And in doing so, you're going to recognize that you're more than enough. You're more than enough to do and be anything you want to be. And so people get excited. They see possibility. They understand and appreciate that what they've done so far has been perfect, but now they're at a point where they're ready to evolve, and that the challenges are nothing but indicators that there's a part of them that's ready to be healed, so that they can access those vital parts and evolve into who they're ready to be. I have a 2-month program, and that's really more of the healing the past and really reconnecting and becoming more whole, and accessing higher, more, what I call whole brain thinking abilities. And, as you do that, you begin to go, oh, well, now I understand who I am more fully. And, oh, gee, I'm beginning to recognize that what's important to me in my life, what's my highest intention, even perhaps what's my greatest aspiration, what is it that I would really like to do, and how would I need to grow and develop to be able to do that. And so all of a sudden their life has this sense of direction. And with that sense of direction, they develop a passion for looking deeper. And that depth initially is about them, as it's appropriate. And as it becomes more about them, that interconnection, that compassion for themselves, that empathy for themselves, that love for themselves, really is reflected in their relationships with others. Not recognizing that the relationship they had with others before was a reflection of themselves too. Now this new, more empowered and kinder place is being reflected. And so they see it in their partners, they see it in their kids, they see it in their workplace, they see it throughout their life. And it's like they're just in a whole new day. They do see everything. It is a rigged game. Everything coming in their life is rigged, and it's rigged in their favor. It's rigged because it's an indicator, whatever it is, the struggle, the feeling, the emotions are nothing but indicators that of what is ready to be looked at and healed, what you can now breathe into, and to be able to access more of who and what you are. And so that self-discovery on that level, especially with the intentionality of really becoming a leader, or being a better leader, and developing an organization that not only empowers the individuals within it, but who you buy from, who you sell to, how you affect the planet. And those levels of consciousness are what come through with those levels of healing that I take people through.
Hey there. If you're enjoying what we're diving into here on the podcast and want to go deeper, I want to invite you to check out the Soul Purpose Collective. The Soul Purpose Collective is my online community where like-minded changemakers, creatives, and leaders come together to explore what it takes to align and lead from their soul's purpose. Head over to yourpathandpurpose.com/SPC for more details. We'd love to have you join us. I love what you were saying about not being enough, which of course is probably a limiting belief of most humans on the planet. When we're identified with the ego, right? And when we're identified with separation consciousness, because yeah, me, Cameron, as an ego, this identity with, these experiences of my life and these traumas, yes, of course I'm limited. But in reality, I am an unlimited being of the divine creator. And I have the capacity to tap into it, but only if I even know that's possible. And the only way you know that's possible, of course, is by going within and actually realizing it for yourself, right? Spiritual teachers left, right, and center can talk about how you're infinite and we're always manifesting and co-creating and all of this. But until you actually know it within yourself by actually turning within, does that even make any difference, right? But it's in the knowing of really the greatness that you are, which you can access through meditation, through your breath, as you just mentioned, where things shift. And you beautifully described, it was very interesting, and you said it in a beautiful way, because you were describing in parallel, I believe, what a spiritual evolution looks like and a leadership evolution looks like, really all one and the same, because it is that, right?
Yeah.
And so for those who are listening, who are, of course, leaders in positions of authority or own their businesses or whatever, there is that. But whether or not you're in a position of authority, you are leading. You are leading through your energetic influence over others. So whether that's yourself, first of all, leading self, leading your family, leading your friends and others around you, but that leadership is a natural expression of a spiritual evolution.
And the
It
key to
just
that, I mean, in the past, there's been this kind of ladder to success. And that ladder is broken down and been thrown out at this point, because there isn't any ladder, because that's always about you pleasing others, about you doing and figuring out what they want. And with this new paradigm of really understanding and empowering yourself to be able to access levels of thinking, levels of perception and creativity that you've never had before, but you're very capable of. As you access those, you begin to have perception. You begin to share ideas in the organization. You become a leader, as you say. You become a leader no matter what your position is. And that, I watch people literally within a year become CEO or whatever position is that they're looking for, because they're contributing so much to the organization, or they're coming up with ideas and starting their own organization. Oftentimes with the idea of creating this amazing place that supports everyone involved in growing and developing and learning. They're often called learning organizations, as a matter of fact. So.
I'm interested because with my clients, I've also seen this as well, and with myself in the way in which I operate with my business, is that there gets to be a place when you are truly able to access these deeper aspects of your being and universal consciousness, however you want to call that, that you recognize that you are a channel, a conduit for divine energy to move through you. Really, kind of what you were saying, you aren't good enough. You aren't making it happen. Little Cameron identity me doesn't make a lot happen on my own from pushing and shoving and manipulating and controlling. But when I actually start to tap into the flow of universal consciousness and not just think about this, but know that the universe is working through me and I'm allowing that to happen. It's a very different experience of working, of leading, So I'm curious. I talk about this with some of my clients too. Is like, what is that like to know yourself as a channel for the divine, to know yourself as you can call it a servant leader if you want to. Um, Although sometimes I think that term sounds a bit more egoic, like let me lower myself, when in reality, I'm not doing that. What I want to do is elevate my consciousness so that, the overflow affects others around. But there is a space at which, you realize you're not really the doer. When you can actually get out of the way enough, the universe will do some really amazing things with you, but you're not the one doing that. You really truly become a channel. I'm curious how maybe you see that, or how any of your clients, you've seen this sort of evolution similarly.
Yeah, I'm in a place where I can't really talk about the universe doing something through me because I am the universe.
You are that. I love it. It's true. It's true.
Yeah, it's like, well, it's like initially when people come to me, their mind is very noisy and it's repeating the same patterns and unsupportive language that year in, year out, and that's research and it shows that. And so as they begin to understand themselves, as they become more self-aware, as they begin to heal the sources of those chatter, then their mind becomes quieter. And as their mind becomes quieter, the left brain, logical, linear aspect, and the right brain, the more whole bigger picture perspective, begins to enjoy and share and compassionately serve and support each other. And so they really develop what I call whole brain thinking. And they see a vision of what they want to be doing, or of a design or whatever it is, but the left brain also says, oh, and here's the optimal path to that. And within that, all of a sudden your imagination, your creativity, your intuition develops considerably, along with many other things. But it's also then the mind begins to, as in its quietness, that forebrain, which is designed to be the conscious CEO of your life, begins to take over from that emotional center, the amygdala, the role of the leader of your mind, the conscious CEO of your mind. And that forebrain has a much bigger picture. It's much more what's best for everybody, because that's what would be best for me also. And so all of a sudden you're literally accessing levels of frequencies and different aspects of the mind that allow you to really think differently, respond differently. You're more conscious. And consciousness is really, well, how aware am I of my thinking, what I'm thinking, my feelings, and my level of awareness. So all of a sudden, whatever is coming into your life, you're seeing, you're responding, you're experiencing it completely differently than you ever have before, because you're in a different, higher level of consciousness. But moving more in the direction that you're talking about, uh, I have a 9-month journey, and it's really people that go into that where they're integrating everything that they've learned before into their leadership and developing their leadership. And my encouragement is to, yes, you're very smart. That's what got you into the right schools and got you the right job. Yes, you've now become more emotionally intelligent and aware, and you're more supportive of yourself and others. But in this rapidly changing, ever more complex business world and world in general that we're in, you can't be thinking through everything. You have to be more present. You have to come from a place of present curiosity to be able to keep up. And so I train them into what I call using big mind. Big mind is really when they need, they need a design, they want to put something together, they need to solve a problem. Instead of using that left brain logical, they begin to just quiet their mind. And they go into that quiet place and put out to, you would say the universe, I would say to their higher self, to the oneness that they are aspect of. They put out there, oh, I need this design, or I need this image, or I need this solution, and they watch it come in. And that can take place just very quickly. That doesn't have to take any time. Initially, it might take a while before they trust enough to let go and let that information come in. But you get good at it, and it becomes a way of being. When I'm speaking with somebody, I'm oftentimes there's no thought in between. Might be better if there was, I don't know, but yeah, you know, I mean, I design Japanese gardens, and I remember I was asked by one of my clients, CEO in San Francisco, whether he found out I did the Japanese gardens and he wanted me to create one for his wife. Well, I didn't have any time. I was working with all these clients and stuff, and I just sat in my backyard and quieted my mind, put out the image of what I wanted, the effect I wanted to have on their lives, and within an hour and a half, I watched this beautiful design come together. Within 3 months, it was done. Won national, international awards for design and technology, and they were thrilled. And so it's there's so many things. I get more done, and my clients who get into that level of thinking and being get more done within an hour than most people would in a day or two. And so it gives them that ability to really be that surfer on that perfect wave, that they navigate it and use it in an enjoyable way. And that's where they come from. They're literally able to run their organization because they're supporting the leadership and everyone who is involved. So they end up doing less and less and less. They're kind of more just bigger picture people that, are making sure any little things that aren't handled or taken care of. And oftentimes they end up running multiple organizations because they have the time, they have that insight and ability. I have one guy who's got 5 9-figure organizations, businesses, and all after the work, several of them had doubled their value. But as he was sending me his C-suites, and they became the CEOs of the different organizations and handling all of that sort of thing. He is now working on one part of one of his organizations, and that is now that one small part of one organization is going to be making more money than all of his organizations together had before. And so that's where this can go. As your life gets better, you're much more productive and profitable. Your organization becomes the same. And, it's just all because you're accessing all of who and what you are. You're not holding back. You're opening your mind. You're opening your heart. You're opening to what you're really capable of. And I'll tell you, I could have retired some time ago, but I can't even imagine wanting to retire and not have that experience, the joy of guiding people into those places so that they can have that life. It's wonderful.
Mm. It is wonderful. You spoke about a theme that I think is really important that underlies a lot of this. You said something to the effect of, what is good for me is good for all of us. And truly, this is an Aquarian theme, and we're moving into this Aquarian age. And many things are shifting in the world, technology, our thinking, of course, but this principle of honoring myself and doing what's right for me because it's good for the whole is extremely Aquarian. And it's that consciousness that's actually coming through many things in the world. And so, this principle, as it underlies leadership, understanding that, yeah, well, I'm in service and really we're all connected. There is oneness in all things. Yeah. Source isn't moving through me. I am source. I got it. but but anyway, these Aquarian ideas, and I think I was also seeing, as you were speaking of consciousness itself and accessing consciousness in different ways and downloading it, I think there's a really interesting lesson for all of us if we want to look to the external as a mirror right now that we see a lot in the development of artificial intelligence. Now, one can argue AI, artificial, it's fake, whatever, or it's not full intelligence, but it is a form of consciousness. It is. We created it. Humans created it as a form of consciousness, expressing in some way. But I do think is really interesting. You were essentially describing the manifestation process. You talked about your garden and other things where we can focus our attention and energy and download and see what comes through. I don't know how much you've used different artificial intelligence tools, but I use ChatGPT every now and again. Well, no, pretty often these days, and because it's great. And and I used a tool the other day that was like an image generator, and it was like wild. But I'm having two levels of experience here. One, I remember when I first used ChatGPT, I felt like my brain was on fire, but I had been shifting into some other dimension of consciousness itself because I was like, wow, oh my goodness, look, I wasn't just impressed that that a computer could do it. It was like, oh, there's some sort of channeling of universal consciousness in some way through this. And the other day when I was sitting designing I mean, I didn't even end up using it, but it didn't matter. I was playing with a tool to design an image. And it was like, here I am. I input my image. I see it in my mind's eye. Here's what I want it to look like. And then to watch it sort of manifest in that way, I mean, I was tickled by it. It was like, what? This is wild. And in essence, if we look at those tools not as things outside of us, if we recognize that actually those are just reflecting things within us, that we're at a period right now where it's showing us this is how we create. Quite literally. We imagine, we think, we feel it, right? And things come um, into our experience. And as we learn to actually use, or not even use so much as connect with consciousness itself, it's like these AI tools in our productivity, but not. It's within us. I just think it's very interesting that for me, obviously I'm spiritually inclined. I'm experiencing these things and these tools, seeing it as a reflection of consciousness itself, showing us actually what we do at some level. And then, as you say, when you learn to use that within yourself, because your own being as a human is a quantum computer in many ways, then the result is just as you said. You can run five companies. You can download inspiration from all sorts of things in consciousness. So I just think this period that we're moving through is really beautiful. I think the technology is mirroring what's happening, or at least what's possible in our own consciousness. And I guess that's a thing I'd love to maybe hear a little bit from you, because you've been in this space for a while in your career, and you spoke about how things have shifted in that consciousness. And like now, obviously this is more mainstream, we're having this conversation, but that wasn't always the case. So I'm curious what you want to share around how you've seen the consciousness of leadership and the way in which we conceive of leading shifting over the last however long
Yeah.
you want to share.
Well, I do have a large perspective, time wise and otherwise, but yeah, you watch socially, personal development rises of interest, in the 60s, maybe even early 70s, and then it declines and then it rises up. And we're definitely at a time where, where all of a sudden it's of key interest again. Key interest because of the practicalities more than just the fascinations. And,
Mm-hmm.
there is reward. If you want to make more money and be more successful, yeah, you want to learn more about yourself and begin to develop. And, so, I mean, using AI, for example, I mean, I'm working with a company right now and we're looking at using AI to do what I do, you know, and
I don't personally believe that that's really going to ever get there, because I believe there's things about human consciousness that we still
well,
need that I don't think a
yeah,
machine
but
can afford or
how
can
many
do.
people can I
But
see on a monthly, yearly basis? And
yeah, right.
so it
Mm-hmm.
allows us an outreach where we begin to get people thinking differently about themselves, about life, about the world, and gets them looking at taking better care of themselves, being kinder to themselves and others, recognizing, so any level of healing that will get them to a certain level of self-acceptance and love is going to benefit everyone, because then all of a sudden the conversation changes, the outlook on personal development changes, and it becomes acceptable, it becomes exciting, it becomes the norm. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's true. And I appreciate what you were sharing about the practicality because it's interesting. When maybe you go back to the 70s or before, this idea of spirituality could look like real woo woo. I mean, what an astrologer looked like
Yeah.
way back when, who knows? And today, I think those perceptions are changing, but I think it's this recognition that it's practical. I mean, when I speak to people and share, obviously on the show or with my clients or wherever where I'm speaking, I practice astrology because it's extremely practical. I practice it because it has tremendous value in my life and in the lives of others to understand what's happening energetically and also to understand who we are as a soul, a blueprint, right? What is our blueprint? How do we engage in this plan that we set up for ourselves called our life? It's extremely practical. The same thing is true of healing your trauma of the past and looking at your shadows and all of that. It's extremely practical because everything that follows is
Yeah.
impacted by that. And so, I mean, you said it really beautifully. I know my listeners hear it this way too, but for some, they're like, oh, spirituality, woo woo. Well, it really isn't.
Yeah.
It's actually wildly
What's
practical.
right
If you want to
provide.
shift your
Yeah.
experience of life,
Yeah.
this is how you do it, right? And we can't be looking outside of ourselves all the time to try to find those answers because they're just sitting within us. I mean, I think that's one of the most beautiful things about the time we live in, which is ultimately an inflection point in
Mm-hmm.
evolution, the evolution of consciousness in the universe, on our planet, and of course in humanity, is this recognition that, wow, we really didn't know who we were or like our connections to anything and recognize that there were so many things dormant within us that have always been there and other things that are awakening within us because of what's happening evolutionarily, that it makes it for a very exciting time uh, to be living on the planet. Hey there! If you enjoyed the astrology reading at the start of today's episode, imagine how insightful a personalized reading could be for you. In my one on one astrology sessions, we dive deep into your unique birth chart to uncover your soul's blueprint and gain clarity on your soul's journey. Whether you're seeking guidance in your personal growth, exploring your soul's gifts, or wanting to understand more about your life's direction, an intuitive astrology reading with me can offer profound insights for your journey. If you're ready to discover what the stars have to say about your soul's path, head over to yourpathandpurpose.com/astrology readings to book your session today. So I'm curious how you understand really the trajectory of a spiritual journey and purpose, and also maybe the how all of this we're talking about and living our soul's purpose. Um, what would you like to say on that?
It reminds me of an old story where I think 5 or 6 blind guys are groping their way through the jungle and they run into something and they're all touching a different part of it. And one's describing this flatness and the heat and the flexibility and the movement of this rough texture, and another is describing more of a tree trunk. And one's kind of like this, just this wall, but it's moving. And another is this, this thing with hair on the end of it. And another is this long tubular thing that has wind coming out of it. And of course, they've discovered an elephant in the middle of the jungle, and they're all touching a different part of it, and they're all describing the elephant from the part that they're aware of and connected to. And that's what we did with religion. We touched a part of the elephant, and we went out in the world and said, this is what the elephant looks like. This is what the elephant's all about. And in our own limited way, we felt like we were really sharing the truth. And so, nowadays we can really step back and embrace the elephant. We can step back and see the setting that the elephant's in. We can step back into our consciousness and expand, to any level that we want. If you can learn to breathe and let go, breathe and become, if you will. At first you're learning to breathe and heal this, and then you begin to breathe and you leave this, and then you begin to breathe and you feel you're connected with the universe, and then you begin to feel like, well, I'm actually being breathed by the universe. Oh, I'm actually part of the universe. And then as you continue letting go and merge into the infinite, you really move into the void where everything comes from, returns to, if you will. And and that's just the recycling center of existence. And so, who and what we are is, we aren't in one level. We don't exist on one level. We're everything on another level. So the teachings are, we're becoming more sophisticated in terms of I keep hearing people argue about is there a God or no God. Well, it's like you've missed the entire discussion. you know God is something we created when we just were aware of the elephants. Like, well, God looks like this old man on a chair. And then
Mm-hmm.
then we became, okay, well, that's universal consciousness. And it's like, no, God is just consciousness, and consciousness is within and expressed by and creates everything that exists. So if you want to call that God, that's a good word for it. We can continue to use that word, but it's got nothing to do with this sense of separateness that it created something. It is the creation. It is the expression. And so, what level do you want to play on is the question that I always ask. What level of consciousness do you want to live on? Your comfort zone is really, it's like, oh, I'm too unconscious here and I'm having trouble in my life. Oh, I just did a 3-week retreat and I'm blissed out, so I guess I can have ice cream every night this week or something. And I mean, that's your level of consciousness. That's your level of comfort. Well, we're designed to evolve. We're the only constant is change. And the reason that change is so beautiful is because it's always bringing us exactly what we need to learn to accept and become and evolve with. And so it's so we're so beyond the point of getting out of a comfort zone. We just need to dissolve them completely and be in the sense of evolving all the time. We need to let go of our separateness of a religion that's only a fragment of truth. And, yes, it's like, well, we can rely on this, and we have buddies and friends who belong to that religion too. And it's like, I get it, I understand it, but it's so limiting compared to what's available to each and all of us. And so, and our leadership is really, it's getting to that point where a conscious leader not only is concerned about bringing out the best in everyone that works in the organization, they want to bring out the best in whoever they're buying from, whoever they're selling to. They want to make sure the world is a better place because of their organization, no matter what they do. And so, it's just, yeah, what level do you want to play on? That's what it comes down to.
What
And
level do what level do you want to play on? I also love this story that you shared about the elephant, because sitting on my desk in front of my computer is, for those of you who can't see this, it's Ganesh, the Hindu god, the elephant god. That's really about the remover of obstacles, which you also spoke about. So it's like, yeah, which part of
yeah,
this are we seeing? And maybe perhaps more importantly, what can we call upon to help remove the obstacle of not seeing the whole
yeah.
thing?
A lot of people focus on the
Right?
rat.
Um,
So
yeah, instead of the beauty that is an elephant, right? Um, yeah, that's beautiful. So there's a piece about all of this sort of kind of spiritual conversation that I know a lot of people have hesitancy with. It's like, okay, well, I get it. Go within myself, meditate, chill, receive guidance, all of that. But don't I still have to like do something? Because if you're a leader, presumably you have decisions to make and you have actions to take, right? And so, no, sitting on your couch all day long is not going to make you a conscious leader. But I'm curious what you'd like to share about what I call aligned action, which is around truly taking action that's only aligned with what's actually necessary. You know that because of the level of consciousness that you're playing at, and whatever you're feeling inspired or downloaded and receive. So we're not acting out of unconsciousness, just reacting to everything, but rather taking aligned action. And this is how we kind of can explore this idea of being and doing, because I would argue that many leaders in the world, most people in the world, are doing way too much. And in reality, when we come back to our center, which can happen in a breath, right? We can recognize that maybe as I connect with my being, I become more aware of what actually needs to happen and all the other things that don't. So I'm curious how you um, think about this or share or teach with people around taking aligned action, because of course as leaders we do have to take action, but we don't need to do it unconsciously.
Well, as you heal your past and empower your future, you begin to clearly see a vision of what your highest intention is. And as you see your highest intention, that gives you your compass heading for your life. Rather than holding back out of fear, you become passionate and excited about what you're contributing to life and to the world. And you clearly see the value that you have to your. It's like we're all pieces of a puzzle, and we need all of those pieces to come together so that we can see what the puzzle's all about. It's like, well, I'll sit this one out. That doesn't work anymore. You've got to participate to really bring us all together. We're not surviving. We really aren't. When you see what's happening to the planet, it would be silly to think. It's like being in the middle of a traffic accident, and just because you haven't run into the building yet, thinking, "Well, I'm fine." Like,
Oh my God, but how many people say things like that? Yeah, I'm fine. No,
yeah,
you're far
and we're
from
in the
fine,
middle
my
of
friend.
this collision, and it's time to wake up and time to find out who you are. It's time to really find out what your joy and your passion's all about. Why are you here? Granted, I don't think there's necessarily some higher person that, well, I put you here, Ron, for this particular reason. I mean, the truth is, on one level, there's nothing matters. But of course, when you get to that place where you realize nothing matters, then everything matters. And once you realize everything matters, then you go, well, okay, so what am I going to focus on? What's exciting to me? What's my comfort zone? Where can I really contribute? What do I passionately feel towards? What do I enjoy doing? And so you begin to go, okay, so this is what I want to do. This is what I'm going to make important in my life. This is what I'm going to spend my life, you know, doing, making the world a better place. You let go of retirement, you let go of not doing, you let go of sitting on the couch because you're too excited about the opportunities you have to it's like a child. I remember, maybe not nowadays, it's hard for me to say, but I still see my grandkids, they want to get outside. They want to go outside and play. They want to go do something in nature. And it's like, that's who we are. We're designed to grow. We are designed to evolve. We're designed to contribute to this amazing place we are. And right now, too many people are sitting on the couch and we're destroying it. And we're ignoring what we're doing. And it's really just a reflection of our disconnection within ourselves, our disconnection of, wanting to take care of ourselves, be kind to ourselves. So, I mean, it's like, it's different now. It really has changed. CEOs recognize, a few years ago, 30% of CEOs said, yes, you have to go through a personal transformation to really create a new and successful organization. Now it's 90% of CEOs recognize that that's a must. And they recognize that you have to become self-aware and emotionally intelligent to do that. So this isn't just sort of, well, that'd be nice or this would be different. It's like if you don't step up, you're going to be left behind, quite literally. And we've got generations coming in that are just really focused. I mean, I've got a granddaughter in her early 30s who is like, she's just on fire. I'm watching her empower young women in ways that I wouldn't have even imagined was capable or was possible back, when I was that age. And so, it's like, do you want to play or not? Do you want to stay in your fear? Do you want to stay in your limitation? I understand that. I certainly came out of that. I didn't come into the world going, all right, I'm on fire. I'm going to do everything I want. I had to work through all my stuff. But that's the joy of life. That's the joy of life, is discovering who you are and how you can contribute, and just how you can relate with yourself and others throughout your life. It's that connection that is vital to us. And to have that connection, you have to open up your heart. To open up your heart, you have to breathe. To open up your heart and breathe, you have to be present and mindful. You have to give a shit. You have to give a shit about yourself. And if you don't, that's okay. That just means there's something to heal from your past. That just means somebody made you feel like you weren't worthy. And that's just a matter of going in and healing those parts, rescuing that little boy, that little girl that's in there, and helping them to recognize the value they have to you, if nothing else, so that they come into and integrate into your life fully, so that you can begin to express and know yourself on a level you've never known before.
Beautiful. So, do you think you're living your soul's purpose?
Yeah.
I think so too.
I mean, I only flinch a little at my soul's purpose. Is like every aspect of me. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a feeling you were going to say something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I mean, it's for me now. It's like, well, my friend of mine asked me. He's like taught martial arts for 55 years. Grand master kind of guy, really conscious and capable of being. But he asked me one day. He says, "So what is your reference for how you're doing in life?" And I thought for a minute. I said, "Well, it's really how many breaths do I have to take to quiet my mind?" And he said, "Well, what's your gold standard?" And I said, "One breath." So in other words, if I can't take a breath and quiet my mind, then it means I really need to do some deeper work and breathe and heal and get back to center. Because I can't be serving and supporting others if I'm, waving all over the place. If it takes me 7 breaths to get back to a quiet mind, that's okay. But I'm also going to, spend more time in nature, do some introspection, do some meditation, do some healing, do whatever it's going to take. Because it's not a bad thing. It's just an indicator that there's another part available to be healed and empowered and become even more whole, more connected.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, thank you, Ron, so much for spending this time with me today and to sharing your wisdom with my audience. I have very much appreciated this conversation.
Hopefully
So
I
thank
didn't
you.
talk too much.
You had plenty of space to do it. It was wonderful. And if you're interested in connecting with Ron and learning more about his work, you can find out his information in the show
Thank you
notes.
very much,
Thank
Cameron.
you.
Appreciate it.
A heartfelt thanks to you for tuning into this episode. I'm Dr. Cameron Martin, and it's been an honor to support you on your path to self-discovery. As you reflect on today's conversation, remember that the journey toward living and leading from your soul's purpose is ongoing. You're never alone in it. Until next time.